115 Board of Education on Tuesday, July 1st, 2014. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Snoblin?
Here.
Mr. Block?
Here.
Mr. Mormon?
Here.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Here.
Mr. Schreiber?
Here.
Mr. Powers?
Here.
Mr. Bergner?
Here. This vast audience will be relieved to know that I do not have a president's report tonight, so we can jump straight into the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Bergner. And Mr. Rogers, do you have anything to add for tonight?
Actually, tonight, just to make this real quick, just let you know that in the high school we are in our planning phase for next year, so doing a lot of good work, planning on things such as our one-on-one computing initiative, working on revising curriculum, introducing some new curriculum, doing some final work around hiring and staffing, and looking forward to a great summer and a great 2014-15 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. And for the balance of the superintendent's report, I'd like to update the board and community on what may not look real exciting, but actually is some of the most meaningful stuff that we're going to do over the next several years. So in April, the Board of Education approved the mission, vision, and milestones, and it bears reviewing the purpose of each of those things. The mission is why the organization exists. The vision is what we want to be in 10 years, and the milestones are what things will be true if we are accomplishing our vision. The administration was charged with creating strategies and tactics to make the milestones a reality. And literally, the day after school ended, 55 teachers, LFEA representatives, administrators, community members, and board members from Districts 65, 67, and 115 came together to plan the work of the future. And that work began with a data set for groups to review and consider as they planned what was next for us. They then drafted what will be a working document for the summer months, which administrators will review, triage, and capture a more refined version of the work. On August 11th, that same group from all three districts will reconvene as part of the annual two-day administrative advance meeting. Notably, this is the first time that teachers have been invited to participate in those meetings, and it's been my experience that they add greatly to making better plans. As the Harvard Business Review stated in a recent issue, show me a company where the doers are different than the planners, and we'll show you a company where what gets done is different than what got planned. The timing of this meeting was important and very intentional. It was designed to capture people's interests and energies immediately after the school year ended, to give them time to think about things over the summer, and for administrators to work on that plan for the entire summer. In any industry, it's the case that the best people often do their best thinking away from work, and we wanted to capitalize on that fact to benefit our organizations, our staff, and especially our students. And I'll have a further update in the August meeting after our annual advanced meetings.
Thank you. Now is the time of the meeting we dedicate to public participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the board? If not, we can move directly to reports and discussions. Mr. Smick, do we have any?
We do not.
On we go. Board committees. Board Education Committee, Mrs. Snoblin.
We have not met since our last meeting, and as I announced last month, our next meeting is expected to be in September. But I do want to mention that we have two new committee members, members of the community who have been appointed to the committee. With their consent, I'm mentioning their names and appointments tonight. One is Barbara Kessman. She's a resident of Lake Forest. She has two children, one of whom is, I believe, a senior at the high school, and one of whom is a graduate. And Barbara's been very active in school groups, and I'm really looking forward to having her voice on the committee. And then the other one is Reese Markison, who is a Lake Forest resident. Reese has three children, I'm sorry. Yes, he has two children, one of whom is still at the high school and one also is a graduate. Reese will bring, I think, a unique perspective to our committee as well. So that brings us to a total of three committee members on the education, three community members on the education committee, which is consistent with finance and operations. They have three members as well. So we are really looking forward to resuming in September with this new and reinvigorated group, and we're ready to move forward at that time.
Thanks, Nikki. For the Board Finance and Operations Committee, Mr. Block.
Thank you. The Finance and Operations Committee has not met since our last meeting. We are in the process of scheduling a meeting for early August. I don't believe a scheduling tool has been sent out to all the members, but I don't know that we have a consensus yet as to when it might be possible. Do we, Alan? No, okay, it's not finished yet. Fine. The Finance and Operations Committee is also welcoming a new member as a result of Ms. Sorensen's movement from our committee to the board. Congratulations. Her shoes will be hard to fill, but Amy Keaton will be joining us, one of the people who applied for the board opening. We were very impressed with, and we look forward to seating her at our next meeting.
Let me also welcome Ann back to the Education Committee, but now as a board member instead of a community member. Thank you. Your insight was always terrific on that committee, and I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you both, Nikki and Dick. It's great to have 3 new names and faces involved in these 2 committees. All 3 are folks that have made efforts to become involved over the past couple of years and have represented themselves very well in the process. Some have raised their hand when the vacancy arose last month or a couple of months ago. Some have raised their hands to participate in these committees in the past. We've got limited numbers of seats both on the board and on these committees, and we were very pleased that despite having not been selected in the first go-around, they were still interested and willing to take on the responsibility and sometimes the burden of being involved in these groups, and they will be a great value to have. Do we have any liaison reports? No? No?
Just quickly, the North Suburban Special Ed District approved the budget for the next school year at the last meeting. And there will not be a July meeting, so their next meeting will be mid-August.
Thank you. We are now to the action items. The first action item is the approval of City of Lake Forest waste recycling bid.
Thank you, Mr. Bergner. And I'd like to point out that this is something that's been about 2 years in the making, and I'd like to thank Mr. Albus and Mrs. Whipple, and also especially the city for working so diligently on finding a way to make this work. This is literally something that came up when I first arrived in the community. The city has discovered that by recycling, they have saved an astonishing amount of money at the dump because they have a lot fewer trips there. And we want to thank them for partnering with us on this, and Mr. Albus can add more detail to that.
I don't have much more to add other than it did take several months. The city did approach both districts about partnering and becoming their service provider. We did have months of discussions about the service needs, the equipment, the cost, the structure of an intergovernmental agreement. At times I didn't think it was going to work out, but it has. It's before you tonight. This was presented to the elementary board last week. They've approved it as well. From our perspective, while it's relatively cost neutral to us now, I think in the future it might help contain cost or lower them. But I think there's a benefit to the city here as it's utilizing their equipment and offsetting some of their expense. And for that reason, it's a good thing.
Thank you. Are there any questions about this item? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Block?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Aye.
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Bergner?
Aye. Motion is carried, and we can move on to approval of the Human Resources Report. Is there anything beyond the report itself, the contents of the report itself, that Ms. Wilcox you'd like to add, or Mike? No? Any questions or comments about the Human Resources Report? Have a motion to approve then, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Have a roll call?
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Bergener?
Aye. Motion is carried. And we can move on to the last action item, which is the approval of 2014-2015 staff compensation, which is a topic that we appropriately addressed during our executive session. Is there additional to add? Mr. Albus? Are there questions, comments on this item? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
I move that Lake Forest Community High School District 115 Board of Education approve the 2014-2015 staff compensation as discussed in executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further comments? May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Aye.
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Bergener?
Aye. The motion is carried. We get now to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that a member would like to have removed for separate discussion? If not, the consent agenda includes approval of the Honeywell Instant Alert Renewal, the minutes of a regular meeting from June 10th, 2014, the minutes of an executive session on June 10th, 2014, the minutes of an executive session on June 9th, 2014, minutes of an executive session on June 26th, 2014, as well as the approval of disbursements, payrolls, and financial statements for June 2014, and disposal of audio recordings from December 4th, 2014. If I'm correct, Mr. Albus, the financial statements were not actually provided and will be included in the September meeting, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Just a minor correction, that last one was the audio recordings from December 4th, 2012.
Did I say?
I think you said 14.
If I did, I stand
I
correct.
don't think that's happened.
That would be
I take-
impressive,
it would.
however.
Good, but I'm not that good. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or further corrections? If not, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Powers?
Aye.
Mrs. Snoblin?
Aye.
Mrs. Sorensen?
Aye.
Mr. Mormon?
Aye.
Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Schreiber?
Aye.
Mr. Bergener?
Aye. Motion is carried. We received 2 FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, during the last month, both from Mrs. Nancy Thorner, a resident. Announcements, we have our next board meeting on September 9th, 2014. It will be held at 7 p.m. in this room. And that's all I have. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? We're adjourned.